My wife forged my signature to pay her secretary's debt, and she expected me to confirm it before lunch. I discovered the document in a private closing room at Riverbend Commercial Bank in downtown Columbus. The room had smoked glass walls, a polished walnut table, and a screen showing two lender representatives waiting from New York. Marina Voss sat across from me in a cream-colored suit, looking every inch the chief executive officer of Voss Freight Dynamics. She had spent 12 years building the company from a regional trucking broker into a national logistics platform. Business magazines called her disciplined, fearless, and impossible to pressure. Beside her sat Blake Rourke, her executive secretary. Blake was 36, carefully dressed, and always calm when other people were losing money. He handled Marina's calendar, private travel, executive communications, and most of the information reaching her office. He had also become the man she defended before she understood what he had done. A red folder lay open between us. The first page was a personal guarantee for $740,000. The borrower was Rourke Capital Holdings LLC. The collateral was my ownership interest in Kestrel Route Systems, the software company I had founded 4 years before marrying Marina. My name appeared at the bottom. Jonah Ellison. The handwriting was close enough to pass a quick visual inspection. The first letter curved the way mine did. The final stroke leaned slightly upward. Someone had clearly copied it from a real document. But I had not signed anything. I turned to the notarized acknowledgement. It stated that I had personally appeared at an office in Dublin, Ohio, 3 days earlier, presented identification, and confirmed that I understood the guarantee. 3 days earlier, I had been at a manufacturing conference in Phoenix. More than 200 people had watched me speak on a panel that morning. I looked at Marina. What is this? Her expression barely moved. Blake needs short-term financing. His lender required additional security. You pledged my company. No one is taking your company. The document says the lender can seize my shares if he defaults. He won't default. Blake leaned forward, speaking in the patient tone he used whenever he wanted to make another person sound emotional. My property sale closes in 6 weeks. The debt will be repaid immediately. What property? A mixed-use development outside Cincinnati. How much did you invest? His eyes moved toward Marina. She answered for him. The project ran into a title dispute. His private lender accelerated the note. That did not answer my question. Blake's jaw tightened. Just over $1 million. And you need my shares because you lost access to the rest? It is a temporary liquidity problem. I turned another page. The lender had valued my Kestrel Route interest at nearly $9 million. Blake wanted to secure a $740,000 personal debt with property worth more than 10 times that amount. The screen at the end of the table came to life. A woman introduced herself as Dana Hollis, senior counsel for the bank's private credit division. Beside her sat a loan officer named Eric Baines. Mr. Ellison, Dana said, thank you for joining. We only need to confirm your identity, signature, and understanding of the collateral terms. Marina placed one hand flat on the table. Jonah, confirm it so we can leave. I stared at her. She had not asked whether I signed it. She already knew I had not. How did you get my ownership records? I asked. Marina's eyes shifted for the first time. Blake handled the paperwork. That was not my question. She lowered her voice. Your registered agent provided the documents. Not without authorization. Blake stepped in. We requested standard verification materials. Nothing confidential was taken. You requested records in my name. We used the executive family office account. I did not have a family office. Marina had created that phrase to describe the personal files Blake managed for her travel documents, insurance records, investment statements, and copies of our identification. 6 months earlier, I had objected when I learned Blake still possessed a scan of my passport after arranging a trip to Toronto. Marina said I was being difficult. He handles sensitive information every day, she told me. You trust strangers at airports with more. I had insisted the file be deleted. Apparently, it had not been. Dana spoke again from the screen. Mr. Ellison, the bank cannot fund without verbal confirmation. Did you sign the guarantee? Marina looked directly at me. Her message was clear. Say yes now. Argue later. That had become the structure of our marriage. When Voss Freight needed emergency software work, I solved the problem first and discussed payment later. When Marina cancelled anniversaries because Blake claimed there was a crisis, I accepted the apology later. When he presented my operational models as work produced by the CEO's office, she promised to correct the record later. Later rarely came. For 9 years, I had helped protect Marina's company because I believed we were building separate careers inside one marriage. I had redesigned Voss Freight's dispatch architecture after its first platform failed. I negotiated a limited license that allowed the company to grow without buying Kestrel Route outright. I helped Marina retain its largest retail customer during a disastrous winter delivery season. I did not ask for public credit. But I had always expected one thing. My consent would still belong to me. Jonah, Marina said, Blake's creditors are threatening to file suit. If they connect his investment to Voss Freight, reporters will assume company money was involved. Was company money involved? No, Blake answered too quickly. I looked at him. Then why would the lawsuit affect Voss Freight? Because I work directly for the CEO. That is not enough to create corporate liability. It could create reputational damage. Marina's patience thinned. You know how markets react. We are preparing for a major acquisition. A scandal involving my executive office could cost us the deal. So you forged my signature to protect your acquisition. I signed because you would have agreed if Blake had explained the full situation. The lender's counsel stopped taking notes. I kept my eyes on Marina. You signed it? Her face changed. Not much. Enough. Blake said, we should pause this discussion. No, I said. She just admitted it. Marina's voice became colder. I copied your signature because the lender's deadline was yesterday. I intended to tell you tonight. After the money was transferred. After the crisis was contained. I leaned back. Who notarized it? Blake looked toward the screen. Dana answered. The acknowledgement was completed by a notary named Seth Rourke. I looked at Blake. Your brother? My cousin. Marina spoke quickly. That does not mean anything improper happened. I was not in Ohio. The notary relied on identification and video verification. The affidavit said I appeared in person. She had not even read the document carefully enough to know which lies she was defending. 3 weeks earlier, Kestrel Route's registered agent had contacted me about an unusual request. Someone from Marina's executive office had asked for certified ownership records and transfer restrictions. The request claimed the documents were needed for household estate planning. I had never approved it. My attorney, Phoebe Langston, advised me to place a written restriction notice on my shares. She also contacted Riverbend's fraud department after discovering the bank had requested confirmation of my ownership. A financial crimes detective named Talia Mendez called me the following day. If someone presents an actual guarantee, she said, do not warn them. Call me from the closing location. At the time, I thought the concern was excessive. Now I understood why she had insisted. I took out my phone. Marina's hand moved across the table. Don't. You forged a financial document. I made a decision under pressure. You made my decision. Jonah, think about the employees. That sentence had worked on me for years. Think about payroll. Think about the drivers. Think about the customer. Think about the board. Every emergency became my responsibility once Marina connected it to people who had done nothing wrong. But Blake's debt was not payroll. My forged signature would not protect employees. It would protect Blake from the consequences of his investment and Marina from admitting that the man she trusted had created a problem she could not quietly solve. I called Detective Mendez. She answered immediately. This is Mendez. This is Jonah Ellison. I am at Riverbend Commercial Bank, Broad Street office, private closing room 12. The guarantee we discussed is here. Is the borrower present? Yes. Is your wife present? Yes. Did you sign the document? No. Do you authorize the collateral? No. Marina stood. End the call. I continued. The document contains a notarized statement saying I appeared in person 3 days ago. I was in Arizona. Do not leave the room, Mendez said. Do not let anyone remove the original packet. I ended the call. Blake was already gathering his laptop. The bank's screen changed. Dana disappeared from view, replaced by a message saying the transaction had been suspended. The closing room door locked electronically. Blake pulled the handle. What did you do? Exactly what the detective told me to do. Marina stared at me. You called the police on your own wife. I reported my own forged signature. This could destroy the acquisition. You still think the acquisition is the victim. Bank security entered 2 minutes later. Detective Mendez arrived with another investigator shortly after that. She wore a dark jacket over plain clothes and carried an evidence case. She asked everyone to remain seated. The bank provided the original guarantee, access records, upload history, and video from the closing room. Dana and Eric remained available remotely. Mendez examined the notarization. Mr. Ellison, have you ever met Seth Rourke? No. Did you provide him with identification? No. Were you physically present in Dublin on the date listed? No. She turned to Blake. Did you upload the copy of Mr. Ellison's driver's license? He folded his arms. I want counsel. That is your right. Mendez looked at Marina. Did you write your husband's signature? Blake spoke before she could answer. Marina, say nothing. The use of her first name sounded too familiar in the locked room. Marina did not look at him. She looked at me. For years, she had relied on the same certainty. No matter how angry I became, I would eventually protect her. That certainty had brought her to the bank. Yes, she said quietly. I signed it. Mendez asked, did Mr. Ellison authorize you? I believed he would. That was not my question. No. Did he know about the guarantee before today? No. Did you intend for the bank to rely on his signature? Marina closed her eyes. Yes. The second investigator photographed the document and collected Marina's tablet. Metadata from the bank showed the signature file had been created on that device. My license scan came from Blake's executive account. The notary certificate had been uploaded by Seth Rourke's office. No single dramatic statement convicted anyone. But the evidence gave the officers probable cause. Mendez informed Blake that he was under arrest on suspicion of attempted wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. She informed Marina that she was under arrest on suspicion of forgery and submitting a false financial instrument. Marina stood slowly. There was no loss, she said. Mendez remained calm. The bank stopped the transfer. That does not erase the attempt. As an officer secured her hands in front, Marina looked at me. Call Malcolm Tierney, she said. Tell him this was personal, not corporate. Malcolm was the chair of Voss Freight's audit committee. No, Jonah, the board cannot hear this from the press. They should hear it from the evidence. Blake turned toward Marina. You said he would cooperate. Her face changed. For the first time, she seemed to understand that Blake had not only underestimated me. He had built his entire plan on her ability to control me. The officers let him out first. Marina remained beside the table for several seconds. I did this to protect what we built, she said. I looked at the collateral schedule carrying my stolen name. No. You risked what I built to protect him. The door closed behind her. My phone rang before the officers reached the elevator. The caller was Malcolm Tierney. When I answered, he did not ask whether Marina had been arrested. He asked why Voss Freight had paid $460,000 to 3 consulting firms registered at Blake Rourke's home address. Malcolm Tierney called me again before I reached the bank's parking garage. This time, his voice had lost the controlled patience he used during board meetings. Jonah, I need a direct answer. Did Marina authorize those payments? I don't know. You were in the room with her. I was in a room where she admitted forging my signature. That does not tell me whether she approved 3 consulting companies. The payments came through her executive office. Then preserve the records and ask the people who approved them. Malcolm was quiet for a moment. You sound like outside counsel. I sound like someone who finally understands that being Marina's husband does not make me responsible for explaining her company. The elevator opened into the underground garage. Detective Mendez was speaking with a bank investigator near an unmarked sedan. Across the lane, officers placed Blake into a separate vehicle from Marina. Even then, Marina was watching him. Not me. Blake was speaking rapidly to the officer beside him, probably demanding his attorney. Marina stood with her hands secured in front, her face pale but composed. When Blake looked toward her, she gave him the smallest nod. Reassurance. She was still trying to calm him after he had used her tablet, her office, and my identity to secure his debt. Malcolm continued. The board is meeting at 4. Victor wants to suspend both of them immediately. Victor Dane was Voss Freight's chief financial officer. He had never trusted Blake, though he rarely challenged Marina openly. That is the board's decision, I said. We need you there. No, Jonah, you hold the core software license. Kestrel Route holds the license. And you control Kestrel Route. That still does not make me a Voss Freight director. You have information we need. I'll provide documents through counsel. Malcolm lowered his voice. Is this because of the marriage? It is because the last time I raised concerns about Blake in a room full of executives, Marina told security to escort me out. He did not answer. The incident had occurred 4 months earlier. Voss Freight was negotiating a warehouse automation contract with a vendor called Barlow Integration Group. Blake presented the vendor as an experienced national operator with exclusive technology. Kestrel Route's engineers reviewed the demonstration and found copied code, unsupported performance claims, and a security certificate registered to another company. I brought the report to Marina before the executive meeting. She barely read the first page. Blake already completed due diligence, she said. Then his due diligence missed the ownership problem. He understands procurement better than you do. I understand software ownership. You also sell software. The accusation was obvious. She thought I opposed Barlow because it might compete with Kestrel Route. I showed her the technical evidence. She called it incomplete. At the meeting, Blake presented a shortened version of my report that removed the security warnings and described Kestrel Route as having confirmed compatibility. I interrupted him. Marina ended the discussion and ordered me out, saying my role as her husband created unhelpful confusion. The board approved the contract. Barlow missed every milestone. Voss Freight quietly paid another contractor nearly $3 million to repair the damage. Blake kept his job. I stopped attending meetings. Send the official request to Phoebe, I told Malcolm. I'll cooperate with the audit. Are you filing for divorce? The question came too quickly. Why does the board care? Because the company depends on agreements between Voss Freight and your business. The agreements remain valid. That is not what I asked. I looked across the garage. Marina was being placed into the back of the police vehicle. Yes, I said. I'm leaving her. Malcolm exhaled. I'm sorry. So am I. The call ended. Phoebe Langston met me at Kestrel Route's office 40 minutes later. Our headquarters occupied the 3rd floor of a renovated textile building on the edge of the short north. It was not impressive from the street. The lobby smelled faintly of coffee and old brick, and the elevator complained every time it reached the top floor. But the servers were ours. The source code was ours. Every employee understood which decisions required approval and whose credentials could access what. I had built Kestrel Route before I met Marina. At the beginning, it was only a scheduling engine for small freight companies that still planned routes on spreadsheets. I wrote the first version in the spare bedroom of an apartment above a bakery. My college friend, Isaac Boone, joined 6 months later. He handled infrastructure while I met with warehouse managers and drivers. The software was not revolutionary. It was reliable. That mattered more. Our first major customer was a produce distributor that lost thousands of dollars whenever refrigerated trucks arrived late. Kestrel Route reduced missed windows enough to keep the company from losing its largest grocery contract. Word spread. By the time I met Marina, Kestrel Route had 18 employees and contracts in 4 states. Marina was running a freight brokerage inherited from her father, Charles Voss. The company had customers, trucks, and strong regional relationships, but its technology was outdated. Dispatchers coordinated hundreds of loads through email, phone calls, and whiteboards. She came to my office after one of her managers recommended us. She wore a dark red coat and asked questions for 2 straight hours. She challenged every assumption. Then she signed a 6-month pilot. I admired her before I loved her. She understood freight in a way most software founders did not. She knew drivers by name, remembered which customers always paid late, and could look at a route map and identify a bad plan in seconds. The pilot succeeded. Voss Freight expanded. So did our relationship. When we married 3 years later, both companies remained legally separate. Phoebe drafted the prenuptial agreement. Marina's attorney reviewed it. Kestrel Route's shares, source code, patents, and future appreciation stayed mine. Marina's Voss Freight holdings remained hers. At the time, neither of us considered that cold. We considered it responsible. Then the boundaries began disappearing in one direction. Voss Freight paid for the licensed platform, but Marina called me directly whenever the company needed more. A customer threatened to leave, so I spent a weekend redesigning its reporting dashboard. A labor dispute delayed warehouse operations, so my team built an emergency scheduling tool without a work order. Voss Freight faced a cash shortage, and I allowed it to delay nearly $600,000 in invoices. Each decision made sense alone. Together, they trained Marina to see Kestrel Route as a resource she could access through marriage. Phoebe was waiting in the main conference room with Isaac and our finance director, Helena Ortiz. A stack of documents covered the table. "I need your phone," Phoebe said. I handed it over. She placed it inside an evidence bag, sealed it, and gave me a temporary device. "What are you doing?" "Preserving messages before anyone accuses you of deleting or altering them." "I haven't deleted anything." "I know. Now we can prove it." Isaac looked at me. "Did she really sign your name?" "Yes." He leaned back, rubbing both hands over his face. Helena asked, "Did the loan fund?" "No." "Are the shares restricted?" "Yes." "Can the lender make any claim against Kestrel Route?" "Not if the guarantee is invalid," Phoebe said. "But we will send formal notices to the bank, the company's registered agent, every member, and our insurer." She opened the prenuptial agreement. "I'm preparing a petition for legal separation. Standard temporary orders will prevent either spouse from transferring significant assets or creating debt in the other's name. File it." Isaac stared at me. "Today?" "Yes. You've been married 9 years. I know how long I've been married." "I'm not defending her. I'm asking whether you want one day before making it legal." I had 3 weeks between the ownership request and today. She used that time to prepare a forged guarantee. No one argued after that. Phoebe moved to the company agreements. Kestrel Route's current license with Voss Freight has 19 months remaining. They have rights to the existing platform, security patches, and defined support hours. "What about emergency work?" Helena asked. "Anything beyond the schedule requires a separate work order." Isaac gave a humorless laugh. "So half the work Jonah does for them?" "Not anymore," I said. Phoebe looked at me carefully. "Say exactly what you mean." "Kestrel Route honors the contract. No shutdown. No retaliation. No access changes that affect valid use. But I resign from every unpaid advisory role, and no one calls me at home for informal support." "You do not have a home with Marina right now," Isaac said. "I know." The sentence landed harder than I expected. Phoebe asked where I planned to stay. "A hotel. I booked a furnished apartment through a client service. Use it for a week, then decide." She slid another document toward me. It was a notice drafted for Voss Freight's board. Kestrel Route would preserve all records, cooperate with lawful investigations, continue contractual service, and reject any representation that Marina or Blake possessed authority over my shares. I signed it. My signature looked nothing like the one in the bank folder. Helena watched me finish. "How did Blake get the ownership valuation?" "That is what I want to know." Kestrel Route was privately held. Our members knew the approximate value, but the lender's estimate was unusually precise. Phoebe opened a second folder. "Someone contacted a valuation firm 6 weeks ago using Marina's executive office. The request claimed it concerned marital estate planning. I never approved a valuation. The firm sent a draft report to Blake." Isaac leaned forward. "So this was planned for 6 weeks. At least," Phoebe said. I thought of Marina telling me the loan was a sudden emergency. She had not merely copied my signature under pressure that morning. She had let Blake value my company, collect my identity documents, and prepare collateral weeks in advance. "Request the full file," I said. "Already done." My temporary phone rang. The number belonged to Marina's mother, Judith Voss. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. "Jonah, where are you?" she asked. "At my office. Marina has been arrested." "I know. She says you called the police." I reported a forged guarantee. Judith lowered her voice. "She made a mistake trying to protect her company. She forged my name to pay Blake's debt. Blake has served that company faithfully. So have I. That is different. You are family." The old argument in a new form. Because I was family, my work cost less. My time mattered less. My consent could be obtained later. "She expected you to help her," Judith continued. "I helped her for 9 years. And now you're abandoning her during the worst day of her life?" "She created the worst day of mine." Judith went silent. Then she said, "Do not let one document destroy your marriage." "It wasn't one document. I ended the call before she could ask me to protect Marina's reputation. At 3, Voss Freight sent an emergency support request. One of its distribution centers was unable to generate overnight capacity plans. The request came without a purchase order and listed Marina as the approving executive. Helena showed it to me. "Old process," she said. "Reject it and request proper authorization from the interim executive. Victor has not been appointed yet." Then they wait for the board. Isaac studied me. "Can the delay hurt customers?" "Not immediately. They have manual procedures." "You're sure?" "Yes." He nodded. That mattered. I would not harm customers to make Marina suffer. But I would no longer erase every consequence before Voss Freight's leaders felt it. At 4:15, Malcolm sent formal notice that the board had suspended Marina and Blake. Victor Dane was appointed interim CEO. All executive office payments, vendor files, and credentials were placed under outside review. 5 minutes later, Victor submitted the support request correctly. Signed work order. Defined scope. Standard emergency rate. Kestrel Route accepted it. Our engineers found the issue within 2 hours. Blake's office had approved an untested configuration change from an outside consultant. We restored the prior setting and documented the failure. The system continued running. No company collapsed. No jobs disappeared. Voss Freight simply had to follow the same rules as every other customer. At 7, Phoebe received a call from Marina's criminal attorney. Marina had been released pending a formal charging decision. She wanted access to the house and asked that I not file the separation petition until we spoke. "Do you want the call?" Phoebe asked. "No, she may come to the office. Security should not let her past reception." Isaac looked surprised. "You think she would show up here?" "She still thinks I'm angry." "You are angry." "Yes. But she thinks anger is the only reason I would leave." Phoebe filed the petition at 7:42 p.m. At 8:12, Marina called my temporary number. I had not given it to her. Victor probably had. I answered once. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear traffic behind her. "You filed?" "Yes. You didn't even speak to me. We spoke at the bank. I was under pressure. You signed my name before I entered the room. Blake told me the deadline was real. The deadline was his. He said creditors would expose Voss Freight." "You keep repeating what he said." "Because he had documents." "So did I." She stopped. I continued. "I showed you security warnings. I showed you unpaid invoices. I showed you that Barlow's report was false. Every time my evidence conflicted with Blake, you treated me as the problem. That has nothing to do with our marriage. It has everything to do with it. I never stopped loving you. You stopped respecting my no." Her breathing became uneven. "I can fix the guarantee. The bank already stopped it. I can correct the board record. You had years. I can fire Blake. The board already suspended him." She had no action left that was not already forced by someone else. "Come home," she said. "No, we should not discuss divorce over the phone. We are not discussing it. I'm informing you. Jonah, 9 years cannot end in one day." They didn't. Silence filled the line. Then her voice changed. "Where are you staying?" "That is not your concern. I am still your wife." "Legally, yes." She inhaled sharply. Before she could answer, Phoebe entered the room holding a printed email. Her expression told me it mattered. "I have to go," I said. Marina spoke quickly. "Wait. Blake says the vendor payments were confidential acquisition research. Tell the board not to overreact." Even after the arrest, she was still carrying his explanation. I ended the call. Phoebe placed the email in front of me. The valuation firm had produced its file. Blake requested 3 different reports on Kestrel Route. One estimated the company's market value. One estimated what portion Marina might claim in divorce. The third calculated how much pressure Voss Freight could apply by delaying payments and disputing ownership of software created during our marriage. The request was sent from Blake's account. Marina was copied. Her response appeared beneath it. "Proceed quietly. Jonah will cooperate once he understands what is at stake." I read the sentence twice. The forged guarantee had not been the moment Marina decided my consent could be managed. It was only the first time she was caught. The board meeting began at 9 the next morning. Phoebe and I entered Voss Freight's headquarters through the public lobby because my executive badge had been disabled overnight. The receptionist, Lauren Finch, looked embarrassed when the turnstile rejected me. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ellison. Security removed all non-employee executive access." "Who ordered it?" She checked her screen. "Ms. Voss's office." Marina had been suspended for less than 18 hours, yet someone had already used her office to lock me out. Phoebe placed her business card on the desk. "We are attending at the audit committee's request." Lauren called upstairs. Victor authorized our entry within a minute. The headquarters occupied 8 floors of a glass tower overlooking the Scioto River. I had helped Marina choose the building after Voss Freight's first national expansion. I had spent weekends testing wireless coverage in its loading docks, conference rooms, and emergency operations center. Now a security officer escorted me to an elevator I had once entered without thinking. Employees watched as we passed. Some looked away. Others stared openly. The news of Marina's arrest had spread before midnight. A local station had shown video of officers leading her from the bank. Online articles described me as either a betrayed husband or a hostile vendor who had called police during a marital dispute. None mentioned the 6 weeks of planning behind the guarantee. The boardroom occupied the top floor. Malcolm sat at the head of the table with 7 directors, Victor, outside counsel, and representatives from the forensic accounting firm. 2 large monitors showed remote participants, including Voss Freight's largest lender and a lawyer for its private equity investor. A court reporter sat near the wall. Marina entered 5 minutes after us. She wore a dark navy suit and no wedding ring. For one irrational second, that hurt more than the forged signature. Then I noticed Blake entering behind her with his attorney. Both had been released pending formal charges. The court had ordered them not to discuss testimony with each other, but they were still permitted to attend company proceedings through counsel. Marina moved toward her usual chair. Malcolm stopped her. "You are present as a suspended executive and director. Victor is chairing operational matters." Marina stood still. The room waited. Then she took an ordinary chair beside her attorney. Blake sat at the far end of the table. He did not look at me. Malcolm opened the meeting. "This session concerns the attempted guarantee at Riverbend Commercial Bank, payments to entities connected to Mr. Rourke, possible manipulation of board materials, and risks to Voss Freight's software and customer contracts." The lead forensic accountant introduced herself as Dana Whitcomb. She began with the 3 consulting firms registered at Blake's home address. North Meridian Advisory, Grayline Strategic Research, Rourke Continuity Partners. Together, they had received $460,000 over 14 months. No signed master agreements existed. No completed reports had been found. Every invoice remained below the threshold requiring audit committee approval. Victor's face tightened as the payments appeared on the screen. "Who approved them?" Malcolm asked. Dana displayed the authorization history. Blake submitted every invoice. 2 were approved through Marina's credentials. 4 were approved through Victor's account while he was traveling. Victor leaned forward. "I did not approve those." "Your hardware token was used," Dana said. "It stays in a locked drawer in my office." "Who can access the office?" "My assistant, facilities security, and executive leadership." Blake's attorney raised a hand. "My client will not answer questions while the criminal investigation is pending." Malcolm looked toward Marina. "Did you approve the 2 payments under your credentials?" Her attorney whispered to her. Marina answered anyway. "I approved payments described as acquisition research." "Did you receive the research?" Blake briefed me verbally. "Did you ask for written work?" "No, why not?" "Because the acquisition was confidential." Victor looked at her. "What acquisition?" Marina's jaw tightened. "The Stellan Freight opportunity." Malcolm turned to him. "Was there a Stellan acquisition?" Victor opened a file. "We explored it for 3 weeks. The target withdrew before outside diligence began." Dana changed the screen. "The payments to North Meridian continued for 8 months after Stellan withdrew." Marina stared at the dates. Blake remained silent. The next section concerned Barlow Integration Group. The forensic team displayed the report Kestrel Route had prepared 4 months earlier. Our original conclusion appeared first. Barlow's ownership disclosures were incomplete. Its software contained code licensed to a third party. Its security controls were inadequate for Voss Freight's customer data. Kestrel Route did not recommend integration until independent review was completed. Then Dana displayed the version sent to the board. Kestrel Route confirms technical compatibility. Remaining issues are ordinary implementation matters. My name appeared beneath the statement. I had never written it. Malcolm looked toward me. Did you approve that summary? No. Did you know it was presented? Not until after the contract was signed. Did you raise the issue? Yes. Phoebe provided my email chain. The first message went to Marina, Blake, Victor, and Voss Freight's general counsel. The board summary materially alters Kestrel Route's findings. We did not approve Barlow. Please correct the record before execution. Marina's reply appeared beneath it. Blake says the board understands the commercial context. Do not create confusion after approval. A director named Felicia Grant removed her glasses. You knew his conclusion had been changed? Marina looked toward her attorney. Yes. Why didn't you correct it? I believe Jonah's report was overly conservative. Felicia pointed toward the screen. That is not what you wrote. You told him not to create confusion. Marina's voice sharpened. He was not a neutral reviewer. His company benefited if Voss Freight rejected another technology provider. I felt Phoebe's hand touch the folder in front of me. A reminder to remain factual. Dana asked me to explain whether Barlow competed with Kestrel Route. Not directly. Barlow offered implementation services. Kestrel Route licenses routing software. So your company did not gain the implementation contract if Barlow was rejected? No. Did you recommend another vendor? I recommended an ownership and security review. Blake finally spoke. Jonah consistently resisted outside vendors because he wanted Voss Freight dependent on his platform. His attorney turned toward him in alarm. I looked at Blake. Then why did you remove my recommendation instead of challenging it honestly? He had no answer. Marina did. Because you were already angry that I had given Blake authority over the project. There it was. The board was reviewing false records, hidden payments, and a forged guarantee. Marina still believed the core problem was my reaction to Blake's authority. Dana moved to the ownership valuation. The valuation firm's emails appeared on the screen. Blake requested estimates of Kestrel Route's value, my separate property protections, and possible claims Marina might assert during divorce. Marina was copied. Her response was visible to everyone. Proceed quietly. Jonah will cooperate once he understands what is at stake. Malcolm turned toward her. What was at stake? Marina looked at me before answering. Voss Freight needed a permanent software license. Did the board authorize you to pursue Kestrel Route through marital claims? No. Did Jonah refuse the license? Yes. Why? I answered before she could. The proposal gave Voss Freight perpetual access to future versions, expanded source code escrow rights, and restricted Kestrel Route from serving regional carriers. The price did not reflect those rights. Marina said, you could have negotiated. I did. I rejected the draft and offered a standard renewal. You knew the board wanted permanence. The board did not own my company. Blake's attorney objected to the conversation becoming argumentative. Malcolm agreed. Dana displayed one final document. It was titled Kestrel Route Transition Options. Blake had prepared it 3 months earlier. Option 1. Obtain a perpetual license through negotiated pressure. Option 2. Delay unpaid invoices until Kestrel Route faced cash constraints. Option 3. Raise questions about whether software updates created during the marriage belonged partly to Marina. Option 4. Create a customer risk file showing that my personal conflict endangered Voss Freight. A note at the bottom read, Marina believes Jonah will not risk her position publicly. Use that before legal escalation. No one spoke for several seconds. I looked at Marina. Did you see this? She did not answer. Malcolm repeated the question. Did you see this document? Yes. When? 2 months ago. And you did nothing? I told Blake not to circulate it. Did you tell Jonah? No. Did you notify legal? No. Did you reject the strategy? I believed it was contingency planning. Felicia's voice was quiet. It proposed withholding money owed to his company. I never approved that. Victor opened another file. Then why were 27 Kestrel Route invoices placed on executive hold? Marina turned toward him. What? Accounting found the holds last night. Blake marked them pending your personal review. I did not know there were 27. Did you know there were any? She stopped. Yes. How many? 4 or 5. I stared at her. Kestrel Route had delayed hiring twice because Voss Freight payments arrived late. Helena had reduced annual bonuses during one quarter to protect cash reserves. Isaac had postponed a server upgrade. Marina knew at least some invoices were being held. She had never told me. Instead, she called me at home whenever Voss Freight needed more work. Malcolm asked why she allowed it. Marina's answer came slowly. I believed Jonah would continue supporting the company while we resolved the license. You used unpaid invoices as leverage, Felicia said. I did not think of it that way. How did you think of it? As part of our larger relationship. My marriage. She had turned it into an informal credit agreement without my knowledge. Dana asked Helena to join by video. Our finance director appeared from Kestrel Route's conference room. She confirmed that Voss Freight owed $1.9 million under signed work orders and accepted deliverables. Some invoices were more than 10 months overdue. Did Mr. Ellison instruct you to continue work despite non-payment? Dana asked. Yes. Why? He said Voss Freight was under temporary pressure and that the relationship would be resolved. Did he know the invoices were intentionally held? No. Marina looked toward me. For once, she seemed unable to defend herself with the word company. She had not protected employees. She had taken resources from mine. The board recessed for 20 minutes. Phoebe and I moved into a smaller conference room. I stood by the window overlooking the river. She knew, I said. Yes. She knew they were holding invoices. Yes. And every time Helena warned me, Marina said accounting was delayed. Phoebe waited. I kept defending her to my own company. That is why we separate personal guilt from legal responsibility, she said. You made choices based on incomplete information. She helped keep it incomplete. I should have seen it. You did see parts of it. You kept accepting explanations because they came from your wife. That does not make my employees whole. No. Payment will. A knock sounded. Victor entered with Malcolm. We need to discuss the software contract, Victor said. The license remains active, I replied. We know. The board wants a statement confirming continuity. Kestrel Route will provide one. Malcolm hesitated. They also want you to resume executive advisory support for 90 days. No, paid, Victor said. At market rate. No, this is not about Marina. It became about Marina when Voss Freight used my marriage to bypass contracts. Victor nodded. I understand. But customers are asking whether the platform is stable. The platform is stable. They are asking whether you are leaving. I do not work here. Malcolm stepped closer. Jonah, Voss Freight's largest customer, is joining the afternoon session. They want to hear from you directly. What do they expect me to say? That the company can continue operating. It can. And that Kestrel Route remains committed. To the contract. He looked disappointed. For years, commitment had meant more than the contract. That was exactly what had to end. When the meeting resumed, a representative from Halberd Retail joined by video. The company accounted for nearly 18% of Voss Freight's annual revenue. Its chief logistics officer, Celeste Warren, spoke directly. Our agreement assumes continued access to Kestrel Route technology and support. We need clarity. Victor explained the license term. Celeste looked toward me. Mr. Ellison, will your company continue service? Yes. Kestrel Route will meet every written obligation. What about the custom planning work your team has historically provided? Those services were often provided outside the contract. Will they continue? Under properly approved work orders. Marina leaned forward. Jonah, Halberd needs reassurance, not legal language. Celeste's eyes moved toward her. Malcolm said, Marina, you are not leading this session. She ignored him. Tell them nothing changes. I looked at her. Everything already changed. The room became still. Marina's voice hardened. You are willing to risk a customer relationship because you are angry with me. No. I am refusing to promise free services your company never purchased. We built this together. I built Kestrel Route before I met you. You expanded because of Voss Freight. And Voss Freight expanded because of us. That is why contracts exist. Blake watched from the end of the table. There was satisfaction in his face. He wanted the board to see me as emotional. So I gave them numbers. Kestrel Route has delivered 14,600 hours beyond contracted support over 6 years. Voss Freight paid for fewer than half. 27 signed invoices are currently on hold. My company will not abandon customers, but it will no longer subsidize Voss Freight through my marriage. Celeste stopped taking notes. Then she said, "That seems reasonable." Marina looked at her as if she had betrayed her. Celeste continued. "Halberd will maintain the current contract, but we want confirmation that Voss Freight has proper authority over future technical commitments." Victor answered. "We will implement new approval controls immediately." The customer did not leave. The company did not collapse. But Marina had publicly demanded that I erase the consequences again, and this time a customer had watched me refuse. After Celeste disconnected, the board voted. Blake was terminated for cause, subject to final legal review. Marina's suspension continued. Victor received full interim authority. The audit committee approved payment of every undisputed Kestrel route invoice within 10 business days. Outside counsel was instructed to investigate the guarantee, the vendor firms, the altered Barlow report, and the pressure strategy against my company. Marina was prohibited from contacting employees about the investigation. When the meeting ended, she followed me into the hallway. Employees stood near the elevator bank, pretending not to watch agents remove boxes from Blake's office. Marina caught my sleeve. "Jonah." I pulled my arm free. "Not here," she said. I almost laughed. That had been her answer every time the truth threatened her authority. "Not here. Not in front of the board. Not where Blake might be embarrassed." "Here is exactly where you made it public," I said. "You exposed private negotiations. You used company money and my marriage in the same strategy. I was trying to secure Voss Freight's future. You were trying to secure it with property you did not own." She lowered her voice. "I can remove every hold. I can correct the reports. I can tell the board Blake acted without authority. You saw the plan. I did not approve all of it. You approved enough." Tears appeared in her eyes, but her posture remained rigid. "Do you want me to beg?" "No, then what do you want?" "I wanted you to believe me before police, accountants, and directors forced you to." She looked toward Blake's empty office. "I made a mistake. You made me the obstacle every time he wanted something." "That is not true. You forged my signature to pay his debt." The words landed where the excuses could not. Several employees heard them. Marina's face changed. For the first time, she seemed ashamed rather than afraid. "Come home tonight," she said. "Let me explain everything." "No, Jonah, please. I already told Phoebe to convert the separation petition into a divorce filing as soon as the required disclosures are complete." Her hand fell from my sleeve. "You decided that before this meeting?" "I decided it at the bank." She stared at my bare left hand. "You took off the ring?" "Yes." Behind us, federal investigators entered Blake's office with a search warrant. One officer carried out a locked metal case. Another held a laptop sealed in an evidence bag. Detective Mendez approached me. "We found something you need to identify," she said. Inside the metal case were copies of Kestrel route contracts, my tax records, and a draft affidavit accusing me of stealing Voss Freight customer data. The affidavit carried a signature line for Marina. It had not been signed. Yet. I looked at my wife. She did not ask what the document said. Her face told me she already knew it existed. The draft affidavit was 12 pages long. It accused me of accessing Voss Freight customer data without authorization, using confidential lane information to develop Kestrel route products, and threatening to withdraw software support unless Marina transferred company assets to me during a divorce. None of it was true. The final page contained a blank signature line beneath Marina's legal name. Detective Mendez placed the document on a conference table inside Blake's office. "When did you first learn this existed?" she asked. "About 30 seconds ago." "Have you ever accessed Voss Freight customer data outside approved support work?" "No." "Did you use company data to develop Kestrel route products?" "No. Our platform processes customer information under contract, but Kestrel route does not own or reuse that data." "Did you threaten to suspend service?" "No." Phoebe stood beside me. "All technical answers will be supported by access records and contract language," she said. "My client will not speculate about who created the affidavit." Mendez nodded. "That is fine." She turned toward Marina. Marina remained near the doorway with her criminal attorney, Allison Price. Her eyes stayed on the document. Mendez asked, "Ms. Voss, have you seen this before?" Allison leaned close and whispered to her. Marina answered carefully. "I saw an earlier risk memorandum. Did it contain these allegations?" "Some of them." "Did you provide the information?" No, did you tell Mr. Rourke the claims were false? Marina looked at me. I told him Jonah had access to company information because of his support role. That was not the question. Her mouth tightened. No. I did not tell him to remove them. Mendez pointed to the signature page. Did you intend to sign this? I don't know. You received a draft accusing your husband of theft and coercion, and you don't know whether you plan to sign it? I had not decided. The answer was honest. That made it worse. Blake had prepared a weapon against me, and Marina had kept it available in case my refusal became inconvenient. Phoebe requested a copy through the formal evidence process. Mendez agreed that investigators would preserve the original and provide material when legally permitted. I walked away from the table. Marina followed me into the hallway. Jonah, I never signed it. You kept it. I thought Blake was preparing for a worst-case dispute. He created the dispute. I know that now. You knew the allegations were false when you read them. I thought some concerns might be legitimate. What concerns? She hesitated. That Kestrel route knew too much about our customer operations. We knew what Voss Freight paid us to process. You had broad access. Under agreements your lawyers approved. I was under pressure from the board to reduce dependence on an outside company controlled by my husband. So you considered accusing me of theft. I considered protecting Voss Freight. The words came automatically. She heard them only after speaking. Her face changed. I didn't mean it that way. You always do. I left her in the hallway. Phoebe and I returned to Kestrel route before noon. The legal separation petition had already been assigned to a domestic relations judge. Standard temporary financial restraints were effective once Marina received service. Neither of us could transfer major marital assets, create unusual debt, or interfere with the other's separate business. The order did not give me control over Voss Freight. It did not give Marina any right to Kestrel route. It simply stopped either spouse from changing the financial landscape while disclosure began. Phoebe reviewed the next steps in her office. We document the house, joint accounts, retirement plans, insurance, vehicles, and tax obligations. Your prenuptial agreement should control the business interests, but her attorney may still request valuation records. She already obtained them. Through an unauthorized process. We will provide proper disclosure through counsel. Can she claim ownership of software created during the marriage? She can make the argument. The agreement says improvements, derivative works, and appreciation remain separate if developed through Kestrel route. Our records are strong. What about the unpaid services I gave Voss Freight? Those may affect contract claims. They do not automatically create marital ownership. I leaned back. Blake's plan depended on making litigation expensive enough that I would surrender. Yes. He was right about one thing. I avoided public conflict. Until yesterday. I should have stopped this earlier. Phoebe closed the folder. You are responsible for your boundaries. You are not responsible for another adult deciding forgery was an acceptable substitute for consent. That distinction was easier to understand than to feel. At 1, Kestrel route's leadership team gathered in the conference room. Isaac, Helena, and our product director, Lillian Cho, had prepared a risk report. Voss Freight represented 31% of annual revenue. The overdue invoices would improve our cash position once paid, but customer concentration remained dangerous. If Voss Freight entered a long dispute or lost major accounts, Kestrel route would feel it. We need diversification, Helena said. We have needed it for years, Isaac replied. Lillian looked at me. We had opportunities. I knew what she meant. 2 regional carriers had approached us about a lighter version of the routing platform. Both times, Marina argued that serving them would place Kestrel route in direct competition with Voss Freight. Our license contained no exclusivity. I delayed anyway. One prospect eventually chose another vendor. The second, Great Basin Carriers, was still using an outdated system and had contacted Lillian again 2 months earlier. You never showed me their new request, I said. I did, she replied. When? At the product review in May. I remembered the meeting. Marina called halfway through because Blake needed a revised board presentation. I left before Lillian reached the final agenda item. You emailed it afterward, she continued. You said we should wait until Voss Freight's acquisition closed. The acquisition Blake used to justify the false consulting invoices. I had delayed my company's growth for a deal that may never have been real. Contact Great Basin, I said. Offer a paid assessment. Isaac watched me. Marina will call that retaliation. Marina no longer determines our market. Can we support them while meeting the Voss Freight contract? Yes. Then I'll assign a team. Helena opened the cash forecast. If Voss Freight pays the overdue invoices within 10 business days, we can fund the pilot without outside financing. And if they don't? We use the line of credit. No personal guarantees. She nodded. Company assets only. The words felt deliberate after the bank. At 3, Victor called with the first operational consequence. A warehouse launch in Indianapolis had failed its security review. Blake had promised the customer a custom forecasting module that did not exist in the Kestrel route license. Can you build it? Victor asked. Eventually. How long? 10 to 12 weeks after assigned scope. The launch is scheduled for Friday. Then it will not include that module. Blake told the customer it was already in testing. Did anyone verify that with us? No, then his promise was false. Victor exhaled. The customer may delay the entire site. That is a commercial decision. Marina would ask you to create a temporary version. She did that many times. And you usually delivered. Yes. Can you do it again? I looked through the glass wall at my engineers. They were already supporting legitimate customers, correcting Voss Freight's configuration failure, and preparing the Great Basin assessment. No, because of the divorce? Because there is no approved design, security review, budget, or realistic deadline. We can approve the budget today. You cannot buy 10 weeks with a signature. Victor was silent. Then he said, "You're right." It was the first time a Voss Freight executive had accepted that answer without asking me to sacrifice something. He delayed the warehouse launch by 6 weeks. The customer was angry. It did not terminate the contract. Voss Freight issued a written correction admitting the promised feature had not been developed. The board ordered a review of every customer commitment made through Blake's office. The first consequence was not bankruptcy. It was credibility. Promises once treated as assets became liabilities when someone finally checked whether they were real. At 5, Marina arrived at Kestrel Route's reception desk. Security called me. She has counsel with her, the guard said. Send them to conference room 4. Phoebe joined by video. Allison sat beside Marina. Marina placed an overnight bag on the floor but remained standing. I came to discuss the house. You can stay there, I said. I'm not returning. I don't want the house if you're gone. That is not something we decide today. She looked around the room. The walls displayed photographs of Kestrel Route's early installations. Marina appeared in 2 of them, standing beside me in warehouses before either company became nationally known. I remember when this floor had folding tables, she said. It had desks. One of them folded. Her attempt at shared humor failed between us. Allison opened a folder. Ms. Voss is willing to agree that Mr. Ellison has exclusive temporary control of Kestrel Route, subject to ordinary financial disclosure. That is already the legal position, Phoebe said through the screen. We are offering not to challenge it. In exchange for what? A pause in the divorce filing while the criminal and corporate investigations proceed. I looked at Marina. How long? 90 days, Allison said. No, Marina sat down. Jonah, I'm not asking you to come home. You asked yesterday. I understand that was wrong. You want time because you think the investigation may change how I feel. I want time because our marriage deserves more than 48 hours. Our marriage had 9 years. Not after I understood what Blake was doing. I opened the copied valuation email. You were included in this. I thought he was analyzing risk. You told him to proceed quietly. I believed you would cooperate once we explained the company's position. You still describe surrender as cooperation. Her eyes filled. I was wrong. About which part? All of it. That is too easy. She flinched. I continued. You knew invoices were being held. You knew he had prepared claims against me. You knew he wanted leverage over Kestrel Route. You knew I had rejected the guarantee before you asked the bank to rely on it. Which part became wrong only after the police arrived? Marina looked down at her hands. The part where I believed the result would justify it. That answer was better than an excuse. It was not enough to save us. Allison spoke. My client is cooperating with Voss Freight's audit and law enforcement. She has provided access to private messages and personal devices. That may affect her case, Phoebe said. It does not require my client to suspend his. Marina looked toward the camera. Can I speak to my husband without attorneys? No, Phoebe said. I surprised everyone. For 5 minutes. Phoebe's expression tightened, but she agreed to remain connected without participating. Allison stepped outside. Marina and I sat across from each other. I read the affidavit again, she said. Why? Because I wanted to understand why I didn't destroy it. And? I liked knowing there was a way to discredit you if you challenged me publicly. The honesty cut cleaner than denial. I told myself I would never use it, she continued. But keeping it made me feel less vulnerable. You felt vulnerable to your husband telling the truth. Yes. She wiped her eyes. Blake kept saying you wanted control of Voss Freight. I never asked for it. I know. He told me my advice was jealousy. I know. He changed reports. I know. He took company money. I know. And you believed him because he made you feel powerful. She nodded. You made me feel accountable. That used to be why you loved me. It was. What changed? I started believing that being questioned meant I was losing authority. The answer explained her. It did not absolve her. I will tell the board everything, she said. I will correct the Barlow record. I will approve payment of every invoice. Victor already has authority. I can support it as a director. You are still trying to purchase another chance with actions you should take anyway. She closed her eyes. What would not feel like that? Accepting that there may be nothing you can do. For the first time, Marina cried without trying to speak through it. I waited. After a minute, she looked at me. Are you filing the divorce? Yes. When? As soon as disclosure requirements allow. Is there someone else? No, the answer seemed to hurt her more. There was no rival to remove. No misunderstanding to correct. No new woman she could blame for my distance. I was leaving because of what she had done. She stood and lifted the overnight bag. I brought your clothes, she said. The things you keep at home. I could have collected them later. I know. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Blake told me you would never risk Kestrel Route's largest customer by leaving me. I looked at her. He said your company needed Voss Freight more than you needed your pride. And what did you say? I told him you always chose responsibility. That wasn't responsibility. I know. She left the room. At 7, Great Basin Carriers accepted the paid assessment. The contract was small compared with Voss Freight, but it gave Kestrel Route the right to test its regional platform at 2 distribution centers in Nevada and Utah. Lillian brought the signed agreement to my desk. First step, she said. I signed it with my own pen. An hour later, Victor sent formal confirmation that Voss Freight had released all undisputed Kestrel Route invoices for payment. Then Malcolm forwarded another forensic finding. Investigators had traced part of the false consulting payments. Blake used the money for his failed development, luxury travel, and personal credit cards. But $85,000 had gone somewhere else. The recipient was the Voss Opportunity Foundation, Marina's private charity. The transfer description called it an executive sponsorship. No board approval existed. Marina had spent years using that foundation to prove her leadership created opportunities beyond business. Now the audit committee wanted to know whether Blake had purchased her public reputation with money taken from her company. The payment to the Voss Opportunity Foundation changed the direction of the investigation. Until then, Marina could still separate herself from Blake's theft. He had created false vendors. He had accessed Victor's credentials. He had diverted money into his development project. Marina's failures were serious, but she could argue that she had trusted the wrong employee and ignored controls she should have enforced. The foundation made the benefit personal. The Voss Opportunity Foundation funded trade school scholarships, transportation apprenticeships, and small grants for women entering logistics management. Marina launched it 5 years earlier, after a business magazine named her one of the Midwest's most influential executives. She spoke at every annual gala. Her photograph appeared beside scholarship recipients in investor reports and recruiting materials. Politicians attended the dinners. Customers sponsored tables. Voss Freight used the foundation as proof that Marina's leadership extended beyond profit. Now $85,000 connected to Blake's false vendors had entered its account. The amount was not large enough to fund the entire organization. It was large enough to question every public claim attached to it. At 8 the next morning, Malcolm called while I was reviewing Great Basin's implementation plan with Lillian. The foundation board is holding an emergency meeting, he said. Why are you telling me? Because you donated to it 4 years ago. Your name still appears on the original donor list. That does not give me authority over its accounts. No, but reporters may contact you. I'll direct them to the foundation. Malcolm lowered his voice. Marina says the payment was a legitimate Voss Freight sponsorship. Was it? The company approved $40,000 for last year's gala. And the other $45,000? We don't know. Then the foundation should preserve the money and cooperate. They already spent part of it. On what? A scholarship expansion and event expenses. That mattered. If the foundation had innocently received money under a false description, it might be able to return the remaining funds and address the rest through accounting adjustments. If Marina knew the payment exceeded the approved sponsorship, the issue became more serious. Who signed the sponsorship agreement? I asked. Blake submitted it. Marina's electronic signature appears on behalf of Voss Freight. Did she sign personally? She says Blake had limited authority to process routine foundation support. $85,000 was routine? No, I looked through the conference room glass. Lillian and 2 product engineers were discussing freight volume data. Great Basin had provided properly anonymized records through a secure portal. Every permission was documented. The contrast felt almost insulting. At Voss Freight, authority had become whatever Blake claimed Marina intended. At Kestrel Route, a junior analyst could stop a project if a data use form was incomplete. Malcolm, I cannot help you explain Marina's signature authority. I know. Do you? He was silent. Then he said, the board is starting to understand how often we relied on your relationship to fill gaps. That is your problem now. I'm aware. The foundation issued a statement before noon. It confirmed receipt of the $85,000, placed the remaining balance in a restricted account, retained independent counsel, and suspended Marina from all financial authority pending review. It did not accuse her of theft. It did not protect her title. For the second time in 3 days, an institution carrying her name had removed her from control. The public reaction was immediate. Local reporters gathered outside the foundation's office. 2 corporate sponsors paused future donations. A state senator canceled her appearance at the annual gala. Scholarship recipients received emails assuring them that existing awards would continue. Marina called me twice. I did not answer. At one, Voss Freight's largest lender suspended access to a $20 million undrawn credit facility until the company completed its forensic review. The facility had not been needed for ordinary payroll. It supported acquisitions, large warehouse launches, and temporary cash swings. The suspension did not bankrupt Voss Freight. It limited movement. The company delayed 2 expansion projects and postponed the purchase of a regional carrier. Vendors began requesting shorter payment terms. Customers asked whether executive misconduct affected operational stability. Every reaction was reasonable. That was what made the consequences difficult to dismiss. No enemy had attacked Marina. No one had destroyed Voss Freight overnight. People were simply refusing to extend trust before the company proved it deserved more. Victor called at 2. We need to renegotiate the Kestrel Route renewal now, he said. The current term has 18 months left. I know. Then why now? Our lender wants evidence that critical software will remain available. You already have a valid license. They want longer certainty. That is a commercial request, not an emergency. We are prepared to pay market value. I leaned back. A year earlier, Marina had demanded a perpetual license because she believed marriage gave her leverage. Victor was asking for a standard commercial extension because a lender required stability. The difference mattered. Send a proposal through procurement, I said. No private call? No, fair enough. He sounded tired, but he did not push. Before ending the call, he added, the board found more unpaid work orders. How many? 11 beyond the 27 already identified. I closed my eyes. Total? Another 620,000. Were they approved? Signed scopes, accepted deliverables, and completion emails. Then process them. Malcolm wants to discuss a settlement. Phoebe will handle it. Victor hesitated. Jonah, did Marina understand the scale of the unpaid work? She understood enough to tell accounting to send me to her if I complained. That is not what I asked. I don't know what she understood, Victor. I know what she chose not to verify. After the call, Helena entered with the Great Basin budget. The pilot would require 8 additional hires if it expanded beyond 2 facilities. Kestrel could fund them using overdue VOS freight payments, but I did not want our growth dependent on money still under dispute. Assume half the invoices are delayed, I said. That reduces the hiring plan. Then phase it. We may lose the expansion window. Or we may avoid hiring people based on money we don't have. Helena nodded. This was what accountability looked like when no marriage existed to absorb the uncertainty. We made a smaller plan. 4 engineers. 1 implementation manager. Temporary contractors for data migration. The project would move slower, but honestly. At 4, Detective Mendez and a federal financial investigator arrived at Kestrel. The vendor network had crossed state lines, involved electronic transfers, and included possible computer access violations. A federal task force had joined the case. The investigator introduced himself as Special Agent Marcus Bell. He was calm, direct, and uninterested in dramatic conclusions. We are tracing funds, he said. We also need to understand whether Kestrel software or data was used in the scheme. It was not used to transfer money, I said. That is not the only question. Phoebe joined by video. Agent Bell displayed a list of entities connected to Blake. One name caught my attention. Ironwood Process Solutions. Kestrel had encountered the company during the failed Barlow integration. Ironwood claimed to perform security testing. Blake had insisted it review our connection to VOS Freight. The firm produced a short report accusing Kestrel of maintaining excessive access. I had challenged the methodology. Marina accepted the report anyway. How much did VOS Freight pay Ironwood? I asked. Just under $310,000, Bell said. For security testing? For consulting categories that changed over time. Who owns it? A holding company controlled by Blake's former college roommate. I looked at Phoebe's image on the screen. She had already started taking notes. Bell continued. Ironwood received money from VOS Freight, then transferred funds to Rourke Capital and the Foundation. It also paid the law office that completed the false notarization. So Blake used one company for all of it. Not exactly. He used several entities, but Ironwood appears central. Mendez placed a copy of the security report on the table. Did Kestrel ever approve this? No. Did you respond? Yes. We documented false assumptions and requested access to the raw testing records. Did you receive them? No. Why not? Blake said the work was confidential. Bell asked whether Marina knew I disputed the findings. Yes. What did she do? She told me not to challenge the report publicly because it would appear self-serving. Bell made a note. Did the report affect Kestrel financially? It delayed a license renewal and gave Blake an argument for broader control over our source code escrow. Did you agree? No. Did anyone pressure you? Marina. How? She said VOS Freight's board would question why its CEO could not secure cooperation from her own husband. The sentence sounded worse in front of investigators. Bell did not react. He simply asked, did you understand that as a threat? At the time, I understood it as pressure inside a marriage. And now? As a pressure tactic connected to a fraudulent vendor. The interview lasted 2 hours. I provided contracts, correspondence, and access records through Phoebe. The investigators did not ask for unrestricted entry into Kestrel systems. They requested specific data, defined the legal basis, and documented every transfer. Before leaving, Mendez said, Mr. Ellison, Blake's attorney may argue that he acted under Marina's direction. Did he? That is what we are investigating. Do you have evidence? We have messages showing she approved some payments and told him to resolve problems without involving the board. That sounds like her. It does not prove she authorized theft. No. Mendez watched me. You do not seem eager to blame her for everything. She is responsible for enough. That evening, Marina's attorney sent a formal request for a settlement meeting. Phoebe forwarded it with one sentence. She is offering full cooperation on property disclosure and no challenge to Kestrel ownership. I called her. That is already what the prenuptial agreement requires. Yes. What does Marina want? A 90-day delay before converting the separation into a final divorce case. No, she also offers to waive any claim based on marital contributions to software developed during the marriage. Blake's plan gave her that idea. Probably. Still no. Phoebe did not argue. I'll reject it. At 7:30, Great Basin's operations chief joined our pilot review from Reno. Her name was Diana Moss, and she had worked in freight yards for 20 years before moving into management. She was less interested in dashboards than in whether dispatchers could correct bad recommendations without calling an engineer. Lillian demonstrated the override controls. Diana tested 3 scenarios. The system failed one. No one tried to hide it. Isaac explained the defect, proposed a fix, and gave a realistic timeline. Diana smiled. Your sales team lets engineers admit things. We do not have a sales team on this call, I said. That explains it. She approved the next phase. If performance targets held for 60 days, Great Basin would expand to 4 more facilities. The potential contract was worth $5.8 million over 3 years. Not enough to replace Voss Freight immediately. Enough to prove Kestrel Route had a future outside it. After the call, Helena handed me an envelope. The first Voss Freight payment had arrived. $1.1 million. No apology. No special message. Just an electronic transfer tied to 12 overdue invoices. I looked at the confirmation longer than I should have. For years, Marina told me payment was complicated because our companies were connected through us. Victor had processed it in 3 days by treating Kestrel Route like any other vendor with valid documents. The complexity had never been accounting. It had been power. At 9, Marina called again. This time, I answered. Her voice sounded exhausted. The foundation removed my name from the gala. I heard. They say it may be permanent. That is their decision. I didn't know where the money came from. Did you know the sponsorship exceeded the approved amount? I signed a summary showing $85,000. Then you knew the company paid it. I thought the board had approved the full amount. Did you check? No, the same answer. Again. She continued. Blake told me the foundation needed a larger commitment because reporters were questioning our apprenticeship numbers. So he solved one reputation problem with stolen money. I didn't know it was stolen. You knew he kept producing solutions without documentation. I thought that was why he was valuable. There it was. Blake's value was not simply competence. He made obstacles disappear without requiring Marina to examine the cost. Why did you call? I asked. I met with the forensic team. I gave them every private message, including the ones about Ironwood. That is what you should do. I admitted I pressured you to accept the security report. That may help the record. Will it help us? No, her breathing stopped for a second. You don't even need time to answer. I have had time. I keep thinking if I tell you everything, you'll see that Blake manipulated me. He did. And that means nothing? It means he is responsible for manipulating you. It does not erase what you did while you believed him. I signed your name because I thought the company was at risk. You signed my name because you thought your fear mattered more than my choice. She began to cry quietly. I don't know how to fix this. You may not be able to. I cannot accept that. That is part of the problem. The line remained open. For once, she did not demand another answer. Then she said, Blake told me you were preparing to leave long before the bank. Why? He showed me an email from Phoebe discussing asset protection. Phoebe advised Kestrel Route after the ownership request. He said it proved you planned the divorce. Did you ask me? No. Did you ask Phoebe? No, you asked Blake. Yes. Her voice barely carried. I thought you were secretly preparing to take the company away from Voss Freight. It was never Voss Freight's company. I know that now. No, Marina. You knew it then. You just believed you could change the answer. I ended the call. The next morning, federal agents executed search warrants at Ironwood Process Solutions and Blake's condo. They recovered payment records, encrypted drives, and draft media statements. One statement accused me of abandoning Voss Freight during a technical crisis and using the divorce to steal customers. Another described Marina as a victim of financial control. The drafts had been written before the bank closing. But the most damaging item was not about me. It was a spreadsheet listing every warning Marina had received about Blake. Next to each name was a proposed response. Camille Rhodes, Compliance Director, discredit access practices. Victor Dane, use executive credentials. Jonah Ellison, frame as jealous vendor. Malcolm Tierney, keep uninformed until acquisition closes. Beside Marina's name, Blake had written only 3 words. Protect her certainty. He had understood her weakness perfectly. And built an entire fraud around it. Blake's spreadsheet reached Voss Freight's audit committee before noon. By 3, Malcolm had scheduled a special board session for the following morning. Federal investigators agreed to let the company review selected evidence because the spreadsheet directly affected governance, employee discipline, and several pending customer contracts. The meeting would be recorded. Outside counsel would attend. So would Marina. Phoebe advised me not to go unless the board issued a formal request. It arrived 20 minutes later. Voss Freight wanted me as a witness concerning Kestrel Route's reports, the false security review, and Blake's planned accusations. "I'll attend," I said. Phoebe looked across her desk. "You understand this will become public. Parts of it already are. This is different. The board may release findings. Blake's attorneys may accuse you of coordinating with Marina or using the investigation to strengthen your divorce position. I'm not coordinating with her. I know. They may still say it. Then we answer with records." Phoebe nodded. That had become our rule. No emotional statements. No dramatic threats. No claims we could not support. Only records. The next morning, reporters filled the sidewalk outside Voss Freight's tower. Security moved directors, attorneys, and witnesses through a private entrance. I arrived with Phoebe at 8:40. Marina was already inside. She sat in the same ordinary chair she had occupied during the previous meeting. Her title card no longer said Chief Executive Officer. It said Director Marina Voss suspended. Blake appeared remotely from his attorney's office under the terms of his release. His face looked sharper than before, as if he had stopped sleeping. His attorney, David Klein, sat close enough to cover the microphone whenever Blake leaned toward him. Malcolm opened the session. This meeting concerns newly recovered evidence indicating deliberate manipulation of executive decision-making, false vendor arrangements, retaliation against employees, and preparation of misleading claims against Kestrel Route Systems and its owner. Dana Whitcomb, the forensic accountant, began with the spreadsheet. The first column listed people who had challenged Blake. The second described the risk they posed. The third proposed a response. Camille Rhodes, Voss Freight's former compliance director, appeared near the top. Risk, independent review of vendor ownership. Response, challenge unauthorized access, question judgment, remove from active review. Victor Dane appeared next. Risk, payment controls and executive token restrictions. Response, maintain personal access to office, use after-hours approval window. My entry was longer. Risk, technical evidence, ownership rights, influence over Marina, ability to expose dependency. Response, characterize objections as marital jealousy, delay invoices, prepare customer data allegation, create pressure through permanent license negotiations. Marina's entry came last. Risk, may retreat if conflict becomes public. Response, preserve her certainty, isolate contradictory information, present each issue as threat to authority. No one reacted theatrically. Malcolm asked Dana to explain how investigators authenticated the file. She described the laptop image, creation history, backup copies, and references to messages recovered from Blake's phone. The spreadsheet had been updated repeatedly over 13 months. This was not written after the bank incident, Dana said. It was an operating document. David Klein objected to the phrase. My client disputes that interpretation. Dana corrected herself. It was updated in parallel with actual events described in company records. That statement was harder to challenge. The board reviewed Camille's case first. She joined by video with her attorney. Camille had worked at Voss Freight for 7 years. Her performance reviews were consistently strong until she began examining the false vendors. Within 2 months, Blake accused her of unauthorized access to executive compensation files. Marina approved administrative leave. Camille resigned before a disciplinary hearing. Why did you leave? Malcolm asked. Because the investigation was controlled by the office I had reported. Did you believe you would receive a fair review? No. Did Marina speak with you personally? Yes. What did you tell her? That vendor records were incomplete, Blake had bypassed procurement, and someone had used Victor's approval credentials. What did she say? That Blake had already resolved the issues and that continuing to pursue them would damage confidence in executive leadership. Marina looked down. Malcolm asked whether Camille had evidence at the time. Yes. She provided emails, ownership searches, payment records, and a written request for an independent investigation. The request carried Marina's response. I will not authorize a broad review based on speculation driven by personal conflict. Camille's attorney asked that the statement be read fully into the record. It was. Marina requested permission to speak. Her attorney, Allison Price, advised caution, but Marina continued. I wrote that response. Malcolm waited. I had evidence in front of me, she said. I chose Blake's explanation because accepting Camille's report would have meant admitting I had allowed serious control failures. Camille remained still on the screen. Marina turned toward her. I damaged your career to protect my judgment. Camille answered without anger. Yes. I am sorry. I believe you regret it. Hope appeared briefly on Marina's face. Then Camille continued. That does not repair what happened. My attorney will address compensation with the company. I understand. The call ended. The board moved to the Ironwood security report. Agent Marcus Bell had authorized Dana to present portions not restricted by the criminal investigation. The evidence showed Ironwood's testing environment had been created after its report was drafted. Several screenshots were staged. One access log attributed to Kestrel route had been copied from an unrelated incident and relabeled. Blake's attorney objected again. The government has not proved my client created those materials. Dana displayed an email from Blake to Ironwood's owner. Need a version showing Kestrel route retains excessive control. Marina needs leverage before renewal. The owner replied, we can frame privileged access as persistent risk. Need real logs. Blake answered, use prior incident set. Context does not matter for board summary. David Klein muted his microphone. Malcolm turned toward Marina. Did you know the report used unrelated logs? No. Did Jonah tell you it was technically false? Yes. Why did you accept it? Because Blake said Jonah was protecting Kestrel route. Did you ask an independent engineer? No. Did you provide the raw records to the board? No. Felicia Grant leaned forward. You repeatedly describe yourself as deceived. But every person who challenged Blake asked for independent review. You rejected it. Marina's voice remained steady. Yes. That was your decision. Yes. It was the first meeting where she stopped trying to place her responsibility behind his manipulation. Dana called me as the next witness. Phoebe placed the original Kestrel route report, our response to Ironwood, and the support access agreements on the table. Dana asked me to explain how legitimate remote sessions were authenticated. I described the encrypted session marker, engineer identity, customer approval code, and time-limited credentials. Every valid Kestrel route session produced a record in both companies' systems. The access logs Ironwood used contained none of those markers. Could someone inside Voss Freight create the appearance of access? Dana asked. Yes, if they had administrative rights. Did Blake's office possess those rights? Not legitimately. Victor interrupted. Security found that Blake retained an inactive executive support account after his role in a ransomware review ended. Who approved the account? Malcolm asked. Victor looked toward Marina. Her office. Marina closed her eyes. Dana displayed the false affidavit accusing me of data theft. Had you seen this before the search of Blake's office? No. Did you ever threaten to withdraw support in exchange for marital property? No. Did you use Voss Freight customer data to build the Great Basin product? No. The product existed before Great Basin contacted us, and its current testing uses Great Basin's own anonymized data. Can that be verified? Yes. Source control history, development records, and customer data logs are available under confidentiality. David Klein began cross-examination. Mr. Ellison, you benefit from portraying my client as the source of every conflict between you and your wife, correct? No, you filed for separation immediately after his arrest. I filed after Marina admitted forging my signature. You also entered a market Voss Freight had discouraged you from entering. Kestrel route had the contractual right to do so. You received nearly $2 million from Voss Freight after this investigation began. For signed and overdue work orders. You are negotiating a new license from a position of leverage. Through normal procurement. Klein leaned toward the camera. Would your company be growing this quickly if Ms. Voss had not been removed? The honest answer mattered more than the useful one. Probably not. Several directors looked at me. Klein smiled. So you have profited from her downfall? No. Kestrel route had opportunities one delayed to protect my marriage. Her removal ended that restraint. It did not create our product, our engineers, or Great Basin's demand. You are angry with her. Yes. You want the board to punish her. I want the board to make its own decision from accurate records. You called police knowing an arrest could destroy her reputation. I called police because my signature was forged. Klein changed direction. Did Blake ever personally ask you to surrender Kestrel Route? He pressured me to sign a perpetual license. That is a commercial disagreement. He also prepared false theft allegations and used my identity to secure his debt. Allegedly. The document was presented to a bank. Marina admitted signing. Your client's account uploaded my identification. Klein stopped. The record did not need my anger. It carried its own force. After my testimony, the board reviewed the foundation payment. The foundation's independent counsel confirmed that Marina had approved an $85,000 sponsorship summary without verifying board authorization. Blake processed the transfer through Ironwood. $40,000 matched an approved company sponsorship. $45,000 did not. Most of the unauthorized amount had funded an expanded scholarship program. The foundation placed unrestricted funds into escrow to repay Voss Freight if required. Marina had not taken the money personally. But she had accepted the public benefit. A national magazine had praised the scholarship expansion as evidence of her personal commitment. She had given interviews about it. Malcolm asked whether she knew the expanded program depended on the larger payment. Yes, Marina said. Did you ask where the additional company commitment came from? No, why? Because it made the foundation look successful. The sentence settled heavily. She did not blame Blake. She did not say she was too busy. She admitted that success had become something she accepted before asking whether it was real. The final evidence concerned the bank guarantee. Detective Mendez joined remotely and described the timeline without discussing unreleased criminal material. 6 weeks before closing, Blake requested Kestrel Route ownership records. 5 weeks before closing, he commissioned the valuation reports. 3 weeks before closing, his cousin prepared a draft notary certificate. 10 days before closing, Marina received the collateral schedule. 4 days before closing, Blake sent her a scan of my real signature. The morning before closing, Marina created the forged version on her tablet. Malcolm looked at her. You said this was a decision made under immediate pressure. It was not as immediate as I claimed. When did you first know Jonah had not agreed? From the beginning. Did Blake tell you otherwise? He said Jonah would agree once the debt was contained. That is not the same as consent. No, why did you believe you could obtain it afterward? Marina looked at me. Because I had done it before. No one moved. She continued. Not with signatures. With time, work, contracts, and decisions. I would commit to something, then tell Jonah the consequences were too serious for him to refuse. Her voice cracked, but she continued. He usually found a way to help. I turned that into permission. That was the clearest description of our marriage I had ever heard. Not because there had been no love. Because love had been repeatedly used as a collection method. The board recessed at 4. Phoebe and I waited in a private office while directors consulted counsel. Do you feel better? She asked. No, good. I looked at her. Public vindication often feels worse than people expect. You just watched your marriage converted into evidence. I sat by the window. She finally told the truth. Yes. And it does not change anything. No. At 5:30, the board reconvened. Malcolm read 4 resolutions. First, Blake's termination for cause was confirmed. Second, Voss Freight would file civil claims against Blake, Ironwood, and related entities for fraud, breach of duty, and recovery of funds. Third, the company would offer Camille reinstatement or a negotiated settlement and publicly correct the record concerning her departure. Fourth, Marina would be removed as chief executive permanently and asked to resign from the board. The first 3 passed unanimously. Marina was permitted to vote on the 4th. She voted against it. Felicia looked at her. Why? Marina answered quietly. Because I built this company. Malcolm replied, and because of that, you were responsible for protecting it from your own decisions. The resolution passed 7-1. Marina's title ended at 5:47 p.m. She remained a shareholder but lost all executive authority. After the meeting, reporters waited outside the boardroom. Voss Freight's communications team prepared a statement announcing leadership changes, cooperation with investigators, payment control reforms, and continued customer operations. Victor asked me to stand beside him during the customer briefing. No, I said. It would reassure people. Kesselrout will issue its own statement. Marina heard the exchange. She approached slowly. Jonah, please do it. For Victor? For the employees. You still know which argument to use. Her face tightened. I am not manipulating you. You are asking me to lend my reputation to the company immediately after the board removed you. I'm asking you not to let customers believe the platform is at risk. I will state that the license remains active. Stand with Victor. No, she stared at me, then looked toward the employees gathering beyond the glass doors. A year earlier, would have done it. Not because it was required. Because Marina would have called refusal disloyal. This time, Victor accepted my answer. We'll use the written statement, he said. The press conference began without me. I watched from a private office as Victor announced that Voss Freight remained operational and that Kesselrout had confirmed contractual continuity. He did not describe me as a partner, family member, or hidden advisor. He called Kesselrout an independent technology provider. Correct language. At last. Marina gave a separate statement outside the building. She stood before microphones without a company logo behind her. I approved payments without proper review, she said. I dismissed credible warnings, allowed executive controls to be bypassed, and forged my husband's signature. Blake Rourke deceived me, but my authority made the damage possible. A reporter asked whether she blamed me for contacting police. No, do you expect your husband to forgive you? Marina paused. I have spent years expecting him to solve consequences I created. I no longer have the right to expect anything. The statement appeared online within minutes. It restored something important. Not our marriage. My credibility. Customers who had read Blake's draft accusations now heard Marina reject them publicly. Voss Freight's board released the corrected Barlow report and confirmed that Kesselrout had never approved the vendor. By evening, Halberd Retail withdrew its contract review notice. The lender kept the credit facility suspended but agreed to reconsider after the full audit. 2 directors resigned for failing to supervise executive controls. Victor began rebuilding. The consequences were serious. They were also survivable. At 9, Phoebe received a call from federal prosecutors. Blake's attorney had requested a cooperation agreement. He offered to identify every false vendor, recover hidden funds, and testify against others. In return, he wanted reduced charges. Against whom? I asked. Phoebe listened to the prosecutor, then covered the phone. Everyone he can name. Marina? Yes. What is he claiming? That she directed the vendor scheme and planned to frame you. Is it true? We don't know. An hour later, Agent Bell sent a preservation notice concerning new evidence provided by Blake. Among the files were screenshots of messages that appeared to show Marina ordering him to hide ownership records, create the false affidavit, and use my signature if I refused. The messages looked devastating. They were also screenshots, not server exports. Kesselrout's forensic engineer examined one image at Phoebe's request. He found inconsistent spacing around the timestamps. One message used a font version released after the date shown. Blake was not confessing. He was building another version of the truth. And this time, he planned to trade Marina's freedom for his own. Blake's screenshots reached federal prosecutors on Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, Special Agent Marcus Bell had requested original devices, cloud backups, and Voss Freight's archived message database. Blake's attorney insisted the screenshots came from an encrypted account that no longer existed. That explanation created the first problem. Voss Freight retained executive messages for 7 years. The second problem came from the screenshots themselves. Kesselrout's forensic engineer, Isaac Boone, identified inconsistent fonts, altered timestamp spacing, and compression patterns showing that several lines had been added after the original images were created. Agent Bell did not accept our analysis as final proof. Federal investigators used their own laboratory. The result arrived 6 days later. 9 of the 11 screenshots had been altered. The original messages still damaged Marina, but not in the way Blake claimed. One authentic exchange began with Marina writing, "Resolve the ownership issue before the board asks questions." Blake changed it to, "Hide the ownership issue before the board asks questions." Another original message read, "Prepare a legal assessment if Jonah refuses the permanent license." Blake submitted, "Prepare the data case against Jonah if he refuses the permanent license." The real messages showed weak oversight, pressure, and a willingness to use legal leverage against me. They did not show Marina ordering theft or fabricated evidence. Blake had taken her actual failures and edited them into crimes that belonged to him. His cooperation negotiations stopped immediately. A federal magistrate scheduled a hearing to decide whether Blake had violated the terms of his pretrial release by submitting false evidence and concealing assets. Phoebe and I attended because prosecutors expected questions about the false affidavit and Kestrel route access logs. Marina attended with Allison. She sat across the courtroom from Blake. For 3 years, he had stood beside her at every major meeting, controlled who entered her office, and whispered answers before she spoke. Now 2 deputy marshals stood between them. The government called a digital examiner first. He explained the altered screenshots, recovered files, and laptop metadata. Blake had edited the images after his arrest, then copied them onto a drive given to his attorney. David Klein argued that an assistant might have prepared the exhibits. The examiner displayed login records. The edits occurred through Blake's personal account while the laptop was connected to his home network. Blake stopped taking notes. The government then presented financial records from an undisclosed cryptocurrency wallet. Nearly $600,000 had passed through it from Ironwood and 2 other false vendors. Blake had not revealed the wallet during cooperation discussions. He had also purchased a one-way ticket to Belize the night before the bank closing. A second ticket was booked in Marina's name. Allison leaned toward her, but Marina shook her head before the attorney could speak. She had already told investigators she knew nothing about the trip. The government's final witness was Seth Rourke, Blake's cousin and the notary who certified my false appearance. Seth had negotiated a plea. He admitted Blake paid him $12,000 to notarize the guarantee without seeing me. Blake provided my license scan, a copied signature, and instructions to delete office security footage after closing. "Did Marina Voss contact you?" the prosecutor asked. "No." "Did she ask you to create a false certificate?" "No." "Did she know you had never met Jonah Ellison?" "I don't know." "What did Blake tell you?" "That Marina would make Jonah confirm everything after the loan funded." Seth looked toward me only once. "I should have refused," he said. "Yes," the prosecutor replied. "You should have." The judge found that Blake had submitted fabricated evidence, hidden assets, and attempted to obstruct the investigation. His release was revoked. He would remain in federal custody while prosecutors prepared a broader indictment. As deputies moved him away from the defense table, he turned toward Marina. "You approved every step," he said. She did not answer. "You needed me because you couldn't run that company alone." The word struck the weakness he had protected for years. Marina remained seated. "No," she said. "I needed you because you made me believe I never had to admit I was wrong." Blake's face tightened. "You're going to prison too." "Maybe." Her voice did not rise. "But I'm done letting fear decide what I tell the truth about." The deputies led him away. Outside the courtroom, reporters surrounded Marina. Allison advised her not to speak because state prosecutors were still reviewing the forgery charge. Marina stopped anyway. "Mr. Rourke altered evidence and diverted company funds," she said. "I did not authorize those crimes. I did authorize poor controls, misleading payments, retaliation against a compliance officer, and a forged signature. I will answer for what I did without accepting responsibility for what he invented." It was the first public statement she made that neither protected Blake nor begged people to see her as his victim. State prosecutors filed charges 2 weeks later. Marina faced forgery, attempted identity theft, and submission of a false financial document. She did not face charges in Blake's vendor conspiracy because investigators found no evidence that she received money or understood the hidden ownership network. Her responsibility remained serious and narrower. Allison negotiated with the district attorney. Because Marina admitted the signature, surrendered her devices, testified against Blake, and had no prior criminal record, the prosecutor offered a plea that avoided prison. She would plead guilty to forgery and attempted identity theft. The likely sentence included probation, restitution, community service, compliance restrictions, and a temporary prohibition on serving as an officer of a public company. Marina accepted. She did not ask me to write a letter requesting leniency. That surprised me more than it should have. The divorce moved forward at the same time. Our financial disclosure was less dramatic than Blake's strategy predicted. The prenuptial agreement controlled most of the property. Kestrel Route remained mine. Marina's Voss Freight shares remained hers. The house had marital equity that could be sold or bought out. Joint investments would be divided equally. Neither of us requested spousal support. Marina waived any argument that work performed during the marriage gave her ownership in Kestrel Route's source code or future products. Her attorney sent the signed waiver without conditions. Phoebe reviewed it twice. She could have made this expensive, she said. But not successful. Success is not always the purpose of litigation. Delay can become leverage. That was Blake's plan. And she is abandoning it. I looked at the signature beneath the waiver. For years, Marina treated every concession as the beginning of another request. This document asked for nothing. Kestrel Route's Great Basin pilot reached its first major milestone that week. Empty miles dropped 12%. Dispatchers completed 90% of route changes without calling our support team. Great Basin exercised its option to expand into 4 additional facilities. The 3-year agreement was worth $6.1 million. Helena brought the contract to the kitchen area, where Isaac, Lillian, and the implementation team had gathered around takeout containers. No champagne. No dramatic announcement. Just a valid contract earned through a successful pilot. Can we support the expansion? I asked. Lillian opened the staffing plan. Yes, if we hire 6 engineers and 2 implementation leads. Can we fund it without depending on the disputed Voss Freight invoices? Yes. The first payment cleared, and Great Basin's implementation fee covers the next phase. Isaac raised a paper cup. To customers who pay for what they request. Everyone laughed. I signed the agreement. The next morning, Victor sent Voss Freight's proposed license renewal. It contained no perpetual rights, no restrictions on regional customers, and no claim to future Kestrel Route technology. The term was 3 years. Support levels were priced clearly. Voss Freight wanted stability. Kestrel Route wanted payment and boundaries. The proposal respected both. Phoebe negotiated 2 provisions and approved the final version. Victor signed for Voss Freight. I signed for Kestrel Route. The same company that once expected my work through marriage now purchased it through contract. No one lost a job because I stopped providing favors. No system failed because I refused to return to Marina. Voss Freight survived by replacing dependency with process. That was the consequence she had once claimed would be impossible. Marina asked to meet after the license was signed. I almost refused. Phoebe advised one controlled conversation before mediation. It may help close the personal property issues, she said. We met in a private room at her office. Marina arrived alone except for Allison, who waited outside. She looked thinner. Her hair was tied back, and the expensive confidence that once entered a room before her had disappeared. She carried a cardboard file box. What is that? I asked. Everything of yours Blake kept in my executive archive. Inside were copies of my passport, tax returns, Kestrel Route ownership records, old contracts, and personal insurance statements. These should never have been in his office, she said. The investigators cleared them for return. Why did he have my tax returns? I gave them to him when he arranged our mortgage refinancing. That was 5 years ago. I know. You told me he deleted them. I believed he had. Did you check? No, she sat across from me. I've learned that most of my apologies contain the same sentence. I waited. I didn't check. Her hands rested on the file box. I didn't check Blake's vendors. I didn't check Camille's evidence. I didn't check the report that accused your company. I didn't check the foundation payment. And when you told me directly that the signature was not yours, I still tried to make you cooperate. You already knew it wasn't mine. Yes. The word came without hesitation. I want to apologize without calling Blake manipulation an excuse. Then don't use it as one. I won't. She looked at me. I chose him because he made my decisions feel correct. You asked questions. He removed them. That was why you trusted him? At first, I trusted him because he was competent. Later, I trusted him because admitting he was wrong would mean admitting how many people I had hurt to defend him. Camille. Yes. Victor. Yes. My employees. Her eyes filled. Yes. And me. You most of all. I said nothing. She continued. I held your invoices because I knew you would keep helping. I let him remove your name from reports because I wanted the board to believe I had built Voss Freight without relying on my husband. I kept the false affidavit because I wanted protection if you ever stopped being loyal on my terms. Her voice broke. And then I signed your name because I believed your consent was another problem I could solve afterward. It was the apology I had once thought I needed. Specific. Complete. Without excuses. It did not make me want to return. I am sorry, she said. Not because I lost my title. Not because I may be convicted. I am sorry because you gave me chances to see what I was becoming, and I punished you for showing me. I believe you. Hope moved across her face before she could stop it. I ended it gently. That does not rebuild trust. She lowered her eyes. I know. Do you? I'm trying to. She took off her wedding ring and placed it on the table. I keep wearing this as if it gives me the right to ask you to wait. It doesn't. No, she pushed the ring toward me. I left it where it was. It belongs to you. It represented both of us. Then decide what you want to do with it. She closed her fingers around it again. Is there any version of the future where we try again after the divorce? No, the answer hurt her visibly. She did not argue. Counseling? No, separate homes? No, starting as friends? No, tears ran down her face. I did not feel triumphant. I felt the grief of finally saying aloud what had already been true for months. I loved you, she said. I know. Do you still? Part of me remembers loving you. That is not the same as wanting the marriage back. She covered her mouth, then forced herself to lower her hand. Is there someone else? No, that answer broke the final defense she had left. I was not leaving because another woman offered something better. I was leaving because life alone was better than returning to what we had become. She nodded slowly. I won't ask again. Thank you. Before leaving, she handed me a signed property proposal. She would buy out my interest in the house at an independent appraisal. Joint assets would be divided according to the prenuptial agreement. Each party would pay personal legal expenses. She waived all claims against Kestrelrout. The proposal was fair. Phoebe reviewed it and recommended acceptance. I signed the mediation term sheet that afternoon. 3 days later, Marina entered her guilty plea. At sentencing, she received 4 years of supervised probation, 800 hours of community service, restitution for investigative costs, and a 4-year ban on serving as an officer of a publicly traded company. The judge asked whether she wished to speak. Marina stood. I used another person's identity because I believed my position made my fear more important than his consent, she said. That person was my husband. He had trusted me with his life and work. I treated that trust as access. She did not ask the judge to forgive her. She accepted the sentence. Blake's case moved toward federal trial until prosecutors confronted him with the altered screenshots, hidden wallet, and testimony from Seth and Ironwood's owner. He changed his plea. He admitted wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, computer fraud, obstruction, and conspiracy. He agreed to surrender hidden assets and provide truthful evidence against the remaining participants. The plea did not guarantee a light sentence. It guaranteed that his final version of the story would be tested under oath. On the day he entered it, Kestrelrout signed a lease for a larger headquarters near the river. The building had room for 80 employees, a customer training center, and an operations lab designed by Lillian's team. I stood inside the empty space while Isaac measured the server room and Helena argued with a contractor about electrical costs. My phone displayed 2 notices. The first confirmed Blake's guilty plea. The second came from the Domestic Relations Court. Our final divorce hearing had been scheduled for the same week as Kestrelrout's new headquarters opening. One life would close on paper. The other was already under construction. The divorce hearing took less than 20 minutes. Marina and I sat at separate tables in a quiet domestic relations courtroom. Phoebe sat beside me. Allison sat beside Marina. There was no jury. No reporters. No final argument about who had ruined the marriage. The judge reviewed our prenuptial agreement, property settlement, financial disclosures, and signed waivers. Marina would keep the house after paying my share of the marital equity. She retained her Voss Freight stock and retirement accounts. I retained Kestrelrout, its intellectual property, and all future appreciation. Our joint investment account was divided equally. Neither of us requested support. The judge looked over her glasses. Both parties understand that this decree permanently dissolves the marriage? Yes, Your Honor, I said. Marina answered a moment later. Yes. The judge signed the decree. 9 years ended with the click of a pen. Outside the courtroom, Phoebe handed me a stamped copy. You're officially divorced, she said. I looked at my name printed beneath the case number. Jonah Ellison. For months, my name had appeared on a forged guarantee, false affidavits, internal risk plans, and headlines about Marina's fall. Now it appeared on a document I had actually chosen. Thank you, I said. Phoebe studied me. How do you feel? Quiet. That is not a bad answer. Marina emerged from the courtroom with Allison. She had completed the first month of probation and begun community service at a workforce program for people returning from incarceration. The position was unpaid, but she had chosen to continue as a volunteer after completing her required hours. Her former life had been measured in acquisitions, board votes, and national rankings. Now she helped trainees prepare RSMS, complete certification applications, and understand workplace policies. She stopped several feet from me. Allison needs a minute with Phoebe, she said. May I speak to you? Phoebe looked at me. I nodded. The attorneys moved down the hall. Marina held a small envelope in both hands. The court returned the certified marriage record, she said. I thought you might want a copy. I already have one. I know. She looked at the envelope but did not offer it. I kept imagining today would feel like a final chance. It isn't. I understand. Her voice was steady. That was new. She no longer treated every boundary as the beginning of a negotiation. I sold the house, she said. I looked at her. You exercised the buyout. I did. Then I realized I was keeping it because I thought you might remember where home was. I remember. That is not the same as coming back. No, the sale closes next month. I'm moving into an apartment near the workforce center. That sounds practical. She smiled faintly. Practical used to feel like failure. And now? Now it feels honest. A clerk pushed a cart of files past us. Marina waited until the hallway was quiet again. Blake's sentencing is in 6 weeks. I know. His attorney asked me to write a letter supporting leniency. Will you? I submitted a factual statement. I described what he did, what I did, and how long the scheme continued. I did not ask for more punishment or less. That is appropriate. He wrote to me. I said nothing. He apologized for using me. Then he explained that I made it easy. Both can be true. That is what my counselor said. She took a breath. I used to think accepting responsibility meant taking all the blame. Now I understand that was another way to control the story. I looked at her. That is progress. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. Thank you. For what? For saying that without offering hope you don't mean. The courtroom doors opened behind us. Phoebe returned. Marina stepped aside. I won't contact you again unless there is a legal reason, she said. You don't need to disappear. I know. But I need to stop measuring my recovery by whether you notice it. She placed the unopened envelope inside her bag. Goodbye, Jonah. Goodbye, Marina. She walked toward the elevators. This time, she did not turn around. Kestrel Route opened its new headquarters 3 days later. The building stood beside the Scioto River in a renovated industrial district. Its brick exterior remained from the original factory, but the interior held 2 engineering floors, a customer training center, and a live operations lab. Isaac designed the server environment with separate access zones and hardware authentication. No executive override could bypass them. Helena installed financial controls requiring 2 independent approvals for unusual payments. Lillian created a customer commitment system that prevented sales promises from reaching contracts without technical review. The rules were not inspired only by Blake. They were inspired by me. I had spent years allowing informal decisions because I believed trust made process unnecessary. Blake abused that weakness, but I had helped create it by treating documentation as something required only between strangers. At Kestrel Route, trust would no longer mean asking people to ignore safeguards. It would mean building safeguards no one felt insulted by. On opening morning, employees gathered in the central collaboration space around a long wooden table. It was the same table Isaac and I had used in our first office. The surface was scratched, one leg had been repaired twice, and a dark coffee stain marked the corner where Marina once helped me prepare our first major investor presentation. I had considered replacing it. Instead, we restored it without removing the marks. Lillian ran her fingers across the scratches. "This survived everything," she said. "So did we," Isaac replied. Helena handed me oversized ceremonial scissors. "You have to cut the ribbon." "We don't need a ribbon." Great Basin's team flew in. "Victor is here. There are photographers." "Cut it." Victor Dane stood near the entrance with two Voss Freight directors. He had become permanent CEO after the board completed its leadership search. Under his management, Voss Freight closed the false vendor accounts, recovered part of the stolen money, and rebuilt its procurement controls. The company lost one planned acquisition and two smaller customers. It did not collapse. Halberd Retail renewed. The suspended credit facility reopened at a lower limit after the full audit. Voss Freight also settled Camille Rhodes's retaliation claim and publicly corrected the record of her departure. Camille accepted a compliance leadership role at another transportation company rather than return. Victor approached me before the ceremony. "Congratulations," he said. "Thank you." He handed me a folder. Our board approved the final renewal. Phoebe had already reviewed the terms. 3 years. Market pricing. Defined support obligations. No perpetual ownership claims. No restrictions on Kestrel route serving regional carriers. No private side agreements. Victor signed for Voss Freight. I signed for Kestrel route. He looked at my signature. "I assume the bank no longer needs verbal confirmation." I smiled despite myself. "No," he closed the folder. "For what it's worth, Marina built a strong company before she stopped listening." "I know. We're trying to keep the first part. And remove the second? That is the plan." The opening ceremony began. I cut the ribbon because Helena refused to let me escape. Employees, customers, and families entered the building. Great Basin's operations team demonstrated the regional platform in the training center. Drivers spoke directly with engineers about route recommendations that failed in mountain weather. No one hid the problems. We wrote them down. Great Basin's full rollout had reduced empty miles by nearly 14% and late arrivals by 11%. The results attracted 3 additional regional carriers. 1 signed. 1 began a paid pilot. The 3rd chose another provider. That rejection was useful. It reminded us that Kestrel route success would not come from a dramatic reveal that I had secretly controlled the industry. We still had competitors. We still had to deliver. 6 weeks later, Blake appeared in federal court for sentencing. I attended because prosecutors had accepted my victim impact statement concerning the forged guarantee, false affidavit, and attempt to seize Kestrel route. Marina sat on the opposite side of the courtroom. We acknowledged each other with a small nod. Nothing more. The judge reviewed Blake's guilty plea to wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, computer fraud, obstruction, and conspiracy. Prosecutors traced more than $3 million through the false vendor network. Some funds had been recovered from bank accounts, property interests, and cryptocurrency. Blake's attorney asked for leniency based on his eventual cooperation. The prosecutor replied that he cooperated only after submitting altered evidence and attempting to blame others for crimes he designed. Blake stood before the judge. "I lost perspective," he said. "I was trying to protect a company and a leader I believed in." The judge stopped him. "You used that company as a bank account. You used that leader's weaknesses as access. And when discovered, you attempted to manufacture evidence against the people you had already harmed." Blake looked toward Marina. She did not rescue him. The judge sentenced him to 11 years and 8 months in federal prison, followed by supervised release. He was ordered to pay restitution from all recoverable assets. Seth Rourke received a shorter prison sentence and permanently lost his notary commission. Ironwood's owner pleaded guilty under a separate agreement. The process took months. No one was arrested, convicted, and sentenced because of one phone call. My call stopped the transfer. The evidence, audits, witnesses, hearings, and courts did the rest. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around me. One asked whether the sentence felt like revenge. "No," I said. "It feels like a result supported by a record." Another asked whether Marina and I might reconcile now that Blake was going to prison. "No, do you blame him for the divorce? He committed crimes against both of us. Marina made her own decisions. So did I. I left before they could turn the answer into romance." A year after the bank closing, Kestrel route received the Central States Logistics Innovation Award for the Great Basin platform. The ceremony was held at a convention center in St. Louis. Isaac, Helena, Lillian, and the implementation team joined me on stage. The award belonged to them as much as it belonged to me. During my remarks, I did not mention Marina or Blake by name. I thanked Great Basin for taking a chance on an unfinished product. I thanked Kestrel Route's employees for building systems that allowed disagreement without punishment. Then I said, a business is strongest when no person's silence is part of the operating model. The audience applauded. At the reception afterward, I saw Marina near the back of the ballroom. She wore a simple green dress and no executive badge. She had purchased a public ticket. I did not approach her. She waited until the team photograph was finished, then walked over. Congratulations, she said. Thank you. I read Great Basin's results. They were a strong partner. You were right about regional carriers. I know. A surprised smile crossed her face. You never used to say that. I used to need you to agree. The smile disappeared. That is fair. She told me the Workforce Center had offered her a paid program management position. It was several levels below the authority she once held, but she had accepted. I manage 12 trainees and 1 employer partnership, she said. No assistants. How is it? Hard. In a good way? Yes. When I promise something now, there is no one to make it appear completed. She glanced toward the Kestrel Route team. A woman stood beside Helena, laughing at something Isaac had said. Her name was Rachel Keaton, Great Basin's implementation director. Over the past months, Rachel and I had shared several dinners after project meetings and attended a baseball game with colleagues. Nothing had been rushed. Nothing had been hidden. Marina noticed the way Rachel looked toward me. Are you happy? She asked. Yes. With her? We're getting to know each other. Pain crossed Marina's face. She accepted it. I hope she listens when you say no. She does. Marina lowered her eyes. I deserve that. It wasn't meant to hurt you. I know. She reached into her purse and removed the wedding ring. I finally decided what to do with this. I waited. I'm donating it. The Workforce Center has an emergency fund for trainees who need transportation or work clothes. That sounds useful. I wanted to ask whether you minded. I don't. Thank you. She closed her hand around the ring. I used to think losing you was the punishment. And now? Losing you was the consequence. Becoming someone who could do that to you was the real loss. I had no response that would improve the moment. She looked toward the ballroom doors. I said I wouldn't ask again, and I won't. Good. I'm glad you built this. So am I. She nodded once. Then she walked away. Rachel approached after Marina left. You okay? She asked. Yes. You don't have to explain. I know. That was one of the things I liked about her. She did not treat access to me as proof of closeness. She allowed me to choose what I gave. The Kestrel Route team called us toward the stage for another photograph. I joined them beneath the company's name. The award stood on the restored wooden table we had brought from our first office for the event display. Its scratches remained visible beneath the lights. Those marks did not make the table worthless. They proved it had been used. The difference was that no one could mistake its history for permission to damage it again. I placed my hand beside the award. A photographer asked me to sign the event book. I opened to a blank page. For years, my name had been treated as collateral, leverage, and something Marina believed she could add later. Now I wrote it slowly. Jonah Ellison. No one guided my hand. No one copied the shape. No one told me the consequences were too important for refusal. When I finished, Rachel handed me the pen cap. Ready to go back in? She asked. Behind us, the ballroom doors stood open. My team waited beneath warm lights, arguing about where everyone should stand. I looked once toward the lobby where Marina had disappeared. Then I turned toward the people and the future I had chosen. Yes, I said. And I walked inside. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.